Welcome to the show today. You'll get to take a little adventure with a video we'll show toward the end of the show of Sabina, my guest today, and her husband working in Honduras part of the year. We'll get all into that. Sabina Ibarra-Bolaños, thank you for being on the show today. I am at least half Hispanic, and I cannot speak Spanish, and I cannot roll my R's. So my apologies for not saying your name as beautifully as it should sound.
That's okay.
It's okay. Okay. Well, I know we're teasing that video a little bit. It's quite beautiful that I want to show from where you work part of the year and where you live part of the year. But let's just get started with your story. Thank you for being here, first of all.
Thanks for having
me. You moved here after college in Mexico, and you've been here since your early 20s.
Yes.
Had you always planned or hoped to come to the United States, or what did you want for as a child? And did America seem like the place you wanted to be one day?
I had lived in Florida in my youth for a year in middle school and sometime in high school. And I think I kind of fell in love with the idea of being independent and moving from my parents' house and working and just being very independent, which is a little bit, that's not very common in the culture where I was raised, at least when I was younger. But
what's common, that you would stay home, at least stay nearby or in the same home, or what would it have looked like for you?
Yeah, typically stay in the same city. I love my parents to death, but it is very common to stay living with your parents until you marry or until which is also a part of my culture that I love, is that we have such a supportive family environment.
You're not shoved out the door at 18.
No, you're not. But for some reason, I wanted to shove myself out the door and be independent. I think I got it from my mom. My mom is a very strong force in my life. So I really didn't have a plan coming to Oregon. I just knew I wanted to get out of Mexico City and create a life of my own, but I had no idea what that life looked like at the time.
And so you'd finished college. What's your degree in?
Business administration.
So had you planned to work in that field? Obviously, when a lot of people try to work in the field where they graduate. When you moved here, did you get a job in that field?
No, not at all. I moved here right after the recession, the 2008 recession. So jobs were scarce. I was kind of I was told by multiple people that I had an odd profile because I had a college education, but I didn't have any work experience. I was 23 and I had worked before, but little jobs here and there, but I didn't.
Not in your field at all. No type of internship or anything as a preparatory education in the workplace.
Yeah. So my first jobs were in restaurants, and I discovered I loved working in restaurants. I loved it. I loved the atmosphere.
Oh, I was no good at it. I tried it for 3 months once, and I was losing money because I was paying somebody to take my shifts. So I was no good at it. I couldn't remember. I just couldn't stay organized. But so you enjoyed it, and you did well with it, obviously.
I loved it. I discovered a lot about myself. It really took me out of my shell. I was a very shy child and teenager. So working in restaurants really, it taught me a lot of things.
Sure.
There's a lot of skills that I gathered from there. I landed a really awesome job in Portland, Oregon, and at the time, what was one of the most popular restaurants in the city.
Nice.
So yeah, that was my very first taste of really making myself an independent woman. Mm-hmm. And I loved it. I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do as a career long term. But I was okay with that because I learned how to pay my rent, pay my bills, get into debt, get out of debt.
Darn it. And then, so then you're living here and you are working, taking care of yourself. At what point do you transition into something that looks more career oriented to you?
About 6 years into living here, I got a little tired of the lifestyle I was carrying. I had no idea which direction to go. So I had always wanted to dive as a professionally, but I never imagined that. I always thought that would be maybe like a sabbatical, for a few years I'll be a dive instructor and travel the world.
Right.
I never in a million years imagined that it was going to be my long-term career.
So let's talk about then. Well, actually, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, let's talk about your dive life, because it leads into your work life.
Yes.
And you came as a referral to a mutual friend of ours, Ashley, who's been on the show a couple of times. She's a diver as well. And my significant other is a diver. He's dove, I don't know how many times. I myself have only been under the water with him holding me with the regulator in a lake nearby. It just kind of getting my bearings and getting. So I've never experienced it. I don't know that I would be brave enough to do it. I don't have a big adventure side to me that type of adventure. But I love seeing it through people like you and Ashley, and the work that you do and the work-life balance you've created for yourself. So that's part of the message of the show. Is some people think, well, I can't have both. How do I live a dive life and have a career, or have the semblance of what's normal, in terms of the work and career you thought you'd have for yourself. So we're going to get more into that, and we'll just take a break, and we'll come back in just a moment. Hi, we're back talking with Sabina. So we've talked about how you moved here from Mexico in your 20s. You worked in the restaurant industry for a long time, and then you started diving. And you thought, maybe I'll go be a dive instructor. One of the things we were talking about between the break here, or during the break, was you wanted to become a diving instructor. And how did you get from, I like to dive, it's a hobby, I enjoy, at what age did you start diving, to thinking I want to be a dive instructor, and how do I work that into earning a living?
Well, actually, I learned how to dive when I was 20. I had because of a boy. I was landlocked in Mexico City. And the truth is, it was because of a boy. My ex-boyfriend at the time was a scuba diving instructor who worked in the Bahamas. So he encouraged me to get certified. I got certified, in Mexico City in a pool, and then took a trip with my instructor. And I remember thinking to myself, how does my instructor do this for a living? Like, how cool it is to be able to do this as a living. I looked up, that's what I kept thinking. How does one get to be like my instructor? And my ex-boyfriend at the time had a really awesome lifestyle as well. And I think that's what I was
feeding lifestyle
energy. Yeah. But there, for a good 10 years, I didn't dive. I was landlocked. I didn't have friends that dove, family that dove. I think that's why I'm very empathetic with my students that want to get into diving, but it's a minority sport, right? There's not a lot of divers out there. So that's part of the reason.
It is unique in that it's a sport that, unless you're diving in the San Juans where you need a dry suit and all of that, and it's an investment. But it is a sport that's different in that you can do it when you go on vacation. You can try it and do it maybe only once in your life. And you can rent the gear, so you don't have to invest in it. It's something that you can kind of dip your toe in, no pun intended, and see if it's for you. So when you became a dive instructor, one of the things you were saying to me when we were taking a break was, because I'm a scaredy cat. I've never done it. And my significant other, he's a dive master and dive instructor, but I haven't learned. And so you were saying that some of your favorite students are the ones that are the most scared.
Yeah, it's incredible, the transition that happens with someone when they take their first breaths underwater, and being able to be the person that shows them how to do that is incredible. You could see it in their faces. You could see it in their faces the first time they're in the pool. Even in the pool, you could see, you could see them go from fear to the sense of success, and they're so proud of themselves. And it's really, it is really inspirational. Seeing them accomplish.
Well, you're tempting me like this much, and I'm usually like thinking about it this much. So Maybe by the end of our show here, I'll be signing up to come to your dive school. Okay,
Well,
let's talk then. You transitioned into becoming an instructor.
Mhm.
And did you live somewhere, obviously, where you could do that full time? Is that what you were doing at the time?
No.
Oh, no.
No, I was living in Portland. I guess I could have transitioned. There's water close enough to Portland. But no, I Googled where to be and how to become a dive instructor. And I found a location in Honduras, in the Bay Islands of Honduras, a tiny island which had an incredible school. So I started talking to their course director, which is the person in charge of all the professional level training. And I felt like I was in really good hands. And I quit my jobs, started driving Uber so I could save money to go, shut down my apartment, moved into my mom's house. My family was incredibly supportive. And I booked a one-way ticket to Honduras, not knowing how long this was going to take. I budgeted for about 3 months of being there without working. And, that was 7 years ago. And here we are still. I got married to one of the boat captains that I met at that dive school. And very early on, I remember the day in my instructor development course where I knew that I wanted this to be long-term. All of the professional level training is very hands-on, like internships. And so I was able to work with experienced instructors that showed me how to teach others how to dive. So very early on, I knew that I wanted this to be long-term. I didn't go into it. I thought it was temporary, but it wasn't. I discovered my passion through my hobby.
Right. Well, and what do they say? We hear this all the time. Figure out what you love and figure out how to get paid for it. Like figure out what you're passionate about. And that can actually sometimes be a job. I mean, some people are passionate about numbers and they become an accountant, and some people are passionate about teaching and they become a teacher, whatever it is, any type of teacher. And so then you made the transition. So you obviously didn't return within that 3 months, did you?
No.
Yeah.
First time I stayed there for 4 years.
Wow.
Then I took I always had it on my bucket.
Did you get married during that 4 years?
No, we got married in 2020.
Okay.
So shortly during the pandemic, actually.
Yeah.
I did take a break from living in Honduras because it had always been on my bucket list to work on a dive liveaboard, which are boats that only go diving, for 7 days. And for a short period, I moved to the British Virgin Islands with my husband. We both worked on a liveaboard there. I loved the experience.
Does that mean you're on a boat the whole time?
Yeah. So we lived and worked on a dive boat that was chartered every week.
Sure.
So it was wonderful. It was and actually that's where we met the people who then became the angel investors for our business that we now have.
Okay, well, that's a perfect transition, Sabina.
Okay.
So we'll take a break and we come back. I want to talk about it. It's called Off the Dock Adventures. And we're going to take a break. And as we come back in, we're going to play that video that you gave to us. It's so beautiful. It's a couple of minutes long, and we're going to play it in its entirety because it's so beautifully done. And I want people to watch it and relax and see this beautiful place where you live part of the year. We'll be back in just a moment.
There still exists a corner of the Caribbean where you can unplug, disconnect, and breathe. A place and time for your family to come together, to explore, to revel, to relax. A place where the ocean embraces you and shares her secrets. Where unique traditions meet a culture of hospitality and give you enough time to do as much or as little as you choose. Enjoy the water above and below. Paddle or snorkel the warm, crystal clear shallows, or dive deeper and explore the vivid reefs with your private scuba instructor. Learn traditional fishing techniques from the locals and enjoy the harvest of your new skills prepared by your local private chef. Wake up to the sound of the ocean. Make adventure a part of your daily routine. Explore a lost island untouched by commercial resorts. Stroll the sand. Get salty. Get inspired. Get refreshed. Then return to your luxurious guest house and unwind. Your local hosts have a lifetime of experience, allowing them to create custom itineraries that perfectly match your vacation desires. A place where you set the pace. A place to revive your senses. This place is as sacred as time, and it's located off the dock.
When I watched the video ahead of the show, I said, well, we're just going to play it in its entirety because we could have talked over it, but why would we do that? It's so beautifully narrated, so beautifully done. And I want to talk now about, you do this job, you live there, run that business half of the year, and then you're here half the year. And what I love about that is there's so many people who think, I'm going to do that. I mean, obviously, if you have kids in school, I don't know, people homeschool. I interview all kinds of people on this show that take their kids wherever and teach them from wherever they're going. And that's an education in itself. But you go and you work there 6 months out of the year, and then you're in the States 6 months out of the year, and you found a way to do what you love and get paid for it. And you found a way to live where you want and do what you want. So let's talk about that, because there are people watching. There are people I talk to in my job all the time who are searching for a work-life balance, who want to live more passionately in the plans that they had for themselves, the ideas they had for their lives. And you are so clearly doing that. Is it a big sacrifice? Is it a difficult decision? Or is it the most simple thing you can imagine doing?
It's a big sacrifice. It's harder than it sounds.
Sure.
You know, I'm almost 40, and my husband and I would love to have children, but we don't. We have a lifestyle that just, you know, we're moving back and forth. We don't have a lot of stability. We're each other's stability.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But I wouldn't have it any other way. It was difficult. You know, a part of me sometimes wants to have that stability. You know, I wish I owned a home, or I wish I had a monthly paycheck that came in, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Well, the thing too, you know, when I was younger, when my husband passed away, as you know, through our mutual friend, when our son was just 5, and I was very committed and in love with the idea of the traditional roles that my husband and I had, where he worked, he paid the mortgage, I was with our son. He was very involved when he was home, of course, but I wasn't ever thinking, you know, I had a business that ended up being kind of a big deal that I was thinking was just going to be a side hustle. But my point in bringing it up is that I wasn't responsible for the mortgage. If something I created worked out, great. If it didn't, that was okay too. So then I'm a widowed single mom in my early 30s with a 5-year-old son. And while I wasn't left destitute, we had some things in place that provided for us. I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I feed my kid, feed my soul, and be home by 3 o'clock every day when he gets home from school? And working at that for all these years, and now he's 2 years out of college, working at that all these years, I now have a career that enables me to work from anywhere in the world. What's fun about this time is that so many people, as you know, are working remotely now. So there's a lot of people who can work from anywhere in the world. So I want to go anywhere in the world, you know, and I'm looking around at my friends and my family saying, hey, who wants to go? Who wants to go to Portugal for 1 month and not hop around, but just live in that one place and visit the local store and listen to the live music and visit the market? And like be a part of that community for a month. And so what you're doing is so interesting to me, because there are people who talk about doing things like that, and then there are people who actually do things like that. I would like to think I'm a person who's actually going to do it if I can get someone to go with me, or I go alone. But what does that mean to you to have that space in your life? You say you wouldn't change it. What about it makes it worth the sacrifices you've described?
I never feel like I'm going to work.
Right.
I always go to bed excited for the next day to start.
Yes.
And I had never experienced that before. Work, even though I've pretty much always liked the jobs I've had, they always felt like jobs. Also, this is ours. My husband and I created this. We created this. It's our baby, right?
It's your
We don't have
baby. I was
children,
just
but
gonna
this is our
say,
baby, and it's
yeah,
a
it's your
big
baby.
baby with a lot of moving parts. We have all this skin in the game. You know, it doesn't, for us right now, unless of course something huge and out of our control were to happen, that would, and it did. We actually started our business in 2019, but it was quickly shut down because pandemic.
Oh, right.
So
Not
we
a
were
great time
shut
to
down.
start a diving business, right?
We shut it down as soon as we started it. We had, in 2020, we had absolutely no idea if off the dock would be a thing.
Right.
But we did have a lot of support of friends and family. We were very lucky. And I also tell my husband, Joe, that came from years, you know, he's been a dive boat captain since he was 15 in Honduras, in the island. That's why we decided to stay, because he knows that area like the palm of his hand.
Right.
We had a lot of support, but most importantly, we it kind of feels like we don't fit in a regular 9-to-5 office job. I've tried it. I just don't fit in. You know, it's not for me.
Well, just keep doing you. I mean, it's just, I think that you're an inspiration to people who are watching, that you can come to this country, create a life for yourself, and then also decide where is that life. And part of the time it's here and part of the time it isn't. So I want to make sure we mention, we're done in like 20 seconds. It's Off the Dock Adventure. What part of Honduras are you in?
The Bay Islands.
The Bay Islands. So if anyone ever wants to dive there or learn how to dive there, then that's the place to be, right?
Yeah, specifically the island of Utila. But yeah, the Bay Islands is, we could operate from anywhere in the Bay Islands.
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. I hope to see you there someday.
That would be wonderful.